Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with stovetop stuffing. That's right, the oven is full. We got a turkey in there, a green bean casserole, and whatever that thing your aunt brought with the mini marshmallows is. So because of this very common holiday logistical challenge, I'm going to show you how to make stuffing on the stovetop that's not just as good as the one you bake. It might even be better. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And of course, the first thing we're going to need are some very, very dry bread cubes. And these really do need to be bone dry, which in a metal bowl will sound like this. Okay, one of the only real ways to mess up stuffing is to use bread cubes that aren't totally bone dry, which are just not going to absorb as much flavor. And once we're set with about 8 cups of those, we can head to the stovetop to start the stuffing, which, like all great stuffings, will start with a whole stick of butter, which we are going to melt in our largest skillet, set over medium-high heat. And once that butter melts, we can toss in our aromatic vegetables, as we call them in the business, also known as diced onions and celery. And we will also toss in our salt at this point and give everything a stir. And as you probably know, that salt is going to help draw out liquid, which is going to help these veggies soften and sweeten a little quicker. And what we'll do is cook this stirring for about 4 or 5 minutes, or until our onions go from white and stiff to translucent and slouchy, and hopefully looking very similar to this. And then once that's been accomplished, we can start adding some of our herbs, and we're going to be using 4 kinds. Okay, we'll be doing some parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. But at this point, we're only going to be adding the sage and the thyme, because we're using the dry variety of those two. And then later on, we'll add some fresh parsley and rosemary. And then besides the herbs at this point, we'll also add our turkey broth or chicken broth. Okay, either will work, but hopefully you made a turkey stock with the neck and the trimmings. And then all we need to do here besides giving this a stir is let it come up to a simmer. And believe it or not, that's it. All right, once this mixture is boiling, we will carefully remove it from the stove, and we will pour it over our extremely, extremely dry bread cubes. And then we'll grab a spatula, and we will spatulate this very thoroughly to accomplish 2 very important things. Okay, one is to obviously mix everything together, but also we're doing this to release a lot of steam and heat because we're about to add some beaten egg to this. And unless you're making a scrambled egg stuffing, which by the way does not sound good, we don't want this mixture steaming hot. So we will toss that with a spatula for about a minute, and then maybe let it sit for about 5 minutes before adding the rest of our ingredients, which will include some freshly ground black pepper, a few shakes of cayenne, and our last 2 herbs, some freshly chopped Italian parsley, and some freshly and very finely minced rosemary, followed by the aforementioned large beaten egg. And that's it. Once we have everything in there, we'll go ahead and give this another toss with the spatula until we are 100% confident everything's been thoroughly mixed. And of course, if you want to do different herbs other than parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, feel free to switch it up. I mean, you are, after all, the Simon and Garfunkel of not making this exactly like your internet uncle. But no matter what you use, like I said, we'll give that a good mix. And that's it. Our stovetop stuffing is ready to cook on the stovetop. So we will go ahead and melt even more butter in our skillet over medium heat, and we will transfer our stuffing mixture in. And yes, of course, if you don't have a skillet large enough to fit the whole batch, you can do this in a couple batches in a smaller pan, or just have 2 pans going at once. Oh, and yes, I definitely think we want to use nonstick here, since that's going to make it a lot easier to build up a beautiful golden brown crust. And what we'll do is let that cook for about 5 minutes before giving it the first toss. And as you can see, we already have some nice crustification starting. And then what we'll do after we give it this first toss, and we kind of settle and press everything back down, is I like to cover it and let it cook covered for about 5 minutes, which is going to help the mixture cook through, and the eggs are going to tighten up. And then after that, all we'll have to worry about is getting this as crusty and golden brown as we want. So after about 5 minutes, we'll go ahead and uncover that, and we will give that another turn-in and a toss-in. And yes, I switched from the flat, stiff spatula to this more flexible spoonula, which I found a little easier to operate. And basically after about 10 minutes or so, our stuffing's going to be cooked, and we could, if we want, serve it at that point. But what's even a better idea is continue to let this cook and brown until we've reached our desired level of crustification. which for me is going to be pretty severe. All right, besides saving space in the oven, to me the huge advantage of this method is we get a lot more crusty brown bits than if we baked it in the oven. Oh yeah, check it out, that is some nice crustification right there. Oh, and regarding the heat, I said medium, but if you want this to go faster, turn it up to medium-high. That's fine, you'll just have to turn it over more often and keep a close eye on it, because there is definitely a chance you can burn this. So yeah, pretty exciting. And I know I keep referring to this as a stuffing, when it's really a dressing. Okay, it's only a stuffing if the bread cubes are in the bird. But anyway, I'm calling it stovetop stuffing because that's already a thing. And stovetop dressing sounds like a hot vinaigrette. But anyway, we'll go ahead and let this cook. And of course, it's up to you exactly how far to go. Like I said, I like mine fairly well done and nicely browned. So I cook mine until it looked like this. And that's it. All we have to do is transfer that into some kind of casserole or baking dish, where it's going to look exactly like one you would have made in the oven or scooped out of the inside of a bird. Only I think maybe better. Because like I said, we were able to caramelize a lot more of the surface area. And caramelized surface area equals more flavor, every time. And we could serve this as is, or maybe garnish with a little more fresh herb, which I did here with a little more rosemary and thyme. And if you're not familiar with that song, you're probably very confused right now. But anyway, I grabbed a fork and dug in, since this was literally the only food I have in my kitchen. All right, I might have a jar of pickles and a couple IPAs, but that's about it. But who cares? Because that, my friends, was just an amazing, amazing stuffing. All right, this formula is a classic for a reason. Just so simple and delicious, and buttery and herbaceous. Plus, as I've already touched on, what I think is probably a superior texture to ones that are baked in the oven, and certainly to actual stuffings that come out of the inside of the bird, which are generally going to be a lot more wet and pasty and pudding-like. Which reminds me, if you want your stuffing to be wetter and pastier and more pudding-like, simply use a little more broth, and don't toss it and break it up as much. And then once you transfer it into the dish, press it down so it kind of compacts, and you can achieve an entirely different texture if you want. So you have options here. But anyway, that's it. My take on stovetop stuffing. The only problem I had with this is I didn't have the full holiday meal to serve it with, which when you do this for real is not going to be a problem for you. But besides that, I absolutely love everything about this, and even if I had plenty of oven space, I might just do it on the stovetop anyway. But whether you're going to do this because you don't have room in the oven, or you just want to enjoy the sensation of stovetop stuffing crustification, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.